how much of a pay rise they'll be getting this year, but the unions are warning it's not enough.
Yeah, let's go through the details, shall we, of some of the different jobs. So pay for most teachers in England will rise by 5% from September this year, but this goes up to nearly 9% for newly qualified teachers whose starting salaries increase to £30,000. That is in England.
More than 1 million NHS staff, including nurses, will receive an increase of at least £1,400, while doctors and dentists will get at least 4.5% extra, increasing to more than 9% for the lowest earners like porters and cleaners.
Let's look at the police. Police officers in England and Wales will receive a £1,900 salary uplift from September. Prison staff will also get 4%. In both cases, though, new recruits are set to benefit the most.
Well, let's talk with Dr Emma Runswick, Deputy Council Chair of the British Medical Association, and Terry Pullinger, Deputy General Secretary of the Communication Workers Union. He represents Royal Mail staff who have just voted overwhelmingly to take strike action. A good morning to you both. Emma, we'll talk to you first. What did you make of yesterday's deal?
Well, I think it's important to note that even though they're talking about a pay rise, this is in reality a brutal pay cut for thousands of public sector workers. Not all doctors will even receive 4.5%. Lots of junior doctors and staff grade doctors are receiving 2% or 1% because of multi-year pay deals. And that's on top of consecutive pay cuts going back to 2008. So some doctors have lost 30% of their wages compared to 2008. So we're not impressed. We're pretty angry. It's a bitter blow, especially after the pandemic. And now we're thinking about what kinds of actions we can take across the different groups of doctors. And that might well include industrial action.
Because doctors don't strike generally, do they?
Not in general, but the government have to take responsibility for the things that they have pushed us to. The series of cuts on top of pension changes, pension taxation cuts, a tax on staffing, a tax on workload, increasing burnout, are pushing increasing numbers of doctors to leave the profession or the country.
I bet you, though, there'll be people watching this morning who say, I can't get to see a doctor, there are all these delays. I sympathise massively and everybody's feeling the squeeze, but can we as a country afford to pay doctors and everybody else more at the moment? What do you say to them?
I think the question is, can we afford not to? The NHS is in serious difficulty, largely because of staffing and funding cuts over a long period of time. Doctors are feeling undervalued or unvalued entirely. So when we talk about conditions and pay and pensions for doctors, we're in reality talking about the state of the NHS.
Terry, we'll bring you in. Talk to us about why you believe that communication workers are doing the right thing in taking strike action.
Well, they're definitely doing the right thing, and they definitely did it in big numbers. So you said overwhelmingly. I think people need to understand over 87,000 postal workers voted in the ballot to back the union or back the employer, and it's a 97.6% yes vote. So I think that is a historical number, and that's a measure of the anger Emma was talking about. I mean, can you imagine? You're talking about figures of arguably, between 4 and 6 or whatever percent for public sector workers, Royal Mail workers, key workers during the pandemic, key workers always have had 2% imposed on them. And this is why, and the analysis really needs to be as well in terms of measuring the anger, when shareholders are being given millions of pounds off of the back of what those workers have done in the past year or so, and also the leaders of the company and members of the board are giving themselves huge wages, they're giving themselves huge bonuses, but there's just 2% imposed on postal workers. And it's unacceptable. People know their value, they know they're struggling. We're talking about food hubs being set up in businesses. It's disgraceful. My wife and my daughter actually work for the NHS. I've got huge sympathy with what Emma was just saying.
Terry, whenever we talk about pay rises in the public sector, we'll always hear from somebody who runs a small business, for instance, people in the private sector saying, we're not making any money at the moment, we're facing up to 10% inflationary costs, we can't afford pay rises above 2%, we all need to accept it at the moment.
Yeah, well, don't forget, we are in the private sector. We're not in the public sector. Royal Mail was privatised nearly 10 years ago. So we are in the private sector. So it is each case on its merit, certainly as far as we're concerned with our claim. This is our dispute. And the company in to the end of 2020-21 financial year were predicting anywhere between a £500 and £600 million loss. This year it recorded over £758 million profit. That's nearly £1 billion turnaround during the pandemic as well, by the way. And that was performed off the back of our members. They were key workers. They were out there working. They wasn't, working from home or anything else. So it's a massive achievement for Royal Mail as a privatised company, and the people at the top are raking it in. They got their heads in the trough, quite frankly. And this is the only criticism I have about the media on this. We're focusing on people that are poor, people that are having to go to food banks, people that are having pay cuts in real terms. No one seems to be focusing on the people at the top that are still raking it in, and it's unacceptable.
When we talk about 12% inflation and communications workers and junior doctors getting only 2%, we're talking about asking people who are earning, junior doctors £14.13 an hour to take a 10% pay cut. That's the equivalent of working a whole month for free or losing all of your annual leave. This is completely inappropriate to be asking of working people, whether they're doctors or postal workers or nurses or HCAs or rail workers or any group of workers. It's inappropriate to be asking that of people who've kept this country going.
But to the point that Nina was raising there about the private sector as well, can you understand if somebody's watching this morning who, I don't know, has a small business, maybe runs a shop or something like that and doesn't have the option of going on strike or downing tools and having a protest, they just have to cope with what comes in and out of the till. How sympathetic are they going to be to hearing a doctor say we might go on strike?
They might be sympathetic or they might not be, but it's not really the responsibility of small business owners or other workers to be thinking about how much doctors or communications workers or others are getting paid. It's the government who has to take responsibility for this.
Yeah. And do you feel that there is room for manoeuvre? Do you think there is a chance that you'll be able to get a better deal or be heard?
I hope so. I really hope so. The government has a choice here, and if it continues to make the choice that it made yesterday, they're setting themselves on a collision course with our profession.
OK.